I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. If you've got an article or a piece of movie news or a question or a topic that you want me to explore on The Daily Question, then please send me an email or tweet it at me. The details are in the video description below. A huge thank you to everyone who's already started doing that. I'm going to start getting onto your questions and topics from next week onwards. Without any further ado, let's get into the question of the day. And today's question is, has the new Star Wars trilogy destroyed the character of Han Solo? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is twofold. Firstly, there's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of months about the fact that the character of Luke Skywalker was subjected to this awful, horrific demolition derby known as The Last Jedi. His character effectively was destroyed in the name of subverting expectations. We all now are so shocked and horrified whenever we hear that term associated with Star Wars. But what we haven't perhaps talked about is the way in which Han Solo has been treated. Now, Han Solo has been garnering a bit of discussion in the online community of late because of the fact that Solo, or Solo as some are calling it, all credit to Uncle Ethan, is about to be released. And so there's been a big question mark about whether or not this movie, A, was even necessary, B, is it actually going to be good, is this actually going to end up doing huge damage to this wonderfully fleshed out and iconic character that Han Solo was. And all of the simplicity over that original trilogy, there was a really good substantial character that had a lot of meaning and a lot of iconography, if you like, cultural iconography that has become attached to him over the years, and there's a real risk that it could be destroyed with this new film. However, I would say, in actual fact, the character of Han Solo has already been destroyed by the new trilogy. Disney has already destroyed that character, and I don't mean the fact that his own son gave him a lightsaber through the chest. I mean that character, the way it was handled and the way he was treated and written in The Force Awakens effectively was the destruction of that character. Let me explain what I mean. If you go back to the original trilogy, those first three films, Han goes on this really quite awesome and amazing character arc. He goes from being this character who starts at the beginning of Star Wars as a selfish, greedy smuggler. That's all he is. He is a rogue, he is a criminal, he is totally unreliable, and he is very, very selfish. And the way in which his character arc is shown and developed is through the character of Princess Leia, and in particular, the romance that he has with Leia. The romance that he had with Leia wasn't just a romance. It's actually his vehicle for redemption. Remember the very first time he finds out about Princess Leia, and what is he asking? He's asking about how wealthy and rich that she is. Why? Because he wants to make money. He's greedy, he's selfish, he only cares about himself. In the second film, The Empire Strikes Back, we now see this budding romance that's starting to happen between Han and Leia, and it's very clear from the beginning of that film that Han likes Leia. He has become attracted to her. However, in typical Han style, he's not ready to actually make himself vulnerable yet. He plays this whole game of, well, I know you love me, princess, just admit it. It's his way of keeping the walls up. He is not ready to be vulnerable. He's not ready to put himself in a place of vulnerability, and that whole lack of vulnerability is summed up in the closing sequences of that film, where he's about to go down into the carbonite freezing machine, and this could quite possibly mean his death, right? That's how serious the situation is. And Leia looks at him and she says, I love you. And even in that moment when he's facing death, he still can't bring himself to be vulnerable and say, I love you. And in response, he says, I know. Right? And down he goes into the carbonite machine. And then in Return of the Jedi, what happens in Return of the Jedi? Now his character redemption actually comes full circle. And first of all, we have this moment in Jabba's palace, and what happens? It's Princess Leia who comes to save him. It's foreshadowing. It's a little moment of metaphor that tells the whole story of the character arc between the two of them, because she is the one who actually saves him. And then as the film progresses, we see Han Solo, the guy who started as this selfish, greedy guy who was only interested in his own self-gratification and what he could get out of something, is now willing to risk his very life on this dangerous shuttle mission to the moon of Endor, right, on this big attempt to bring about the end of the Empire. So Han's leading that mission. And then on top of that, we see him parting ways with the Falcon, allowing Lando to actually pilot the Falcon, even though it's a tough moment for him. But that's quite a symbolic gesture, because the Falcon is very much this symbol of his former lifestyle, and it's this thing that he loves and he's so attached to. And here he is actually willingly allowing someone else to pilot it, even though there's great sacrifice involved. So this is a change. This is a big change in this character. And then the final moments where we really see this character redemption taking flesh are, there's that scene where up in the Ewok village where Han is confused about what is going on between Luke and Leia just asks Han to hold her, and he does that. He doesn't ask anything in return. And then the full circle redemption arc is on display for us at the very end of that film, when Han Solo, who doesn't realize that Leia and Luke are brother and sister, he thinks there's a budding romance between the two of them. And so he says, I'll tell you what, I won't get in the way when Luke returns. I'm not going to get in the way of whatever's going on between the two of you. And Leia looks at him and says, oh, you dummy, no, he's my brother. And then from there's this romance. The two of them end up together. And this moment isn't just a kiss. This moment isn't just the sealing of a romance between the two of them. This is his redemption moment. At the very end of the trilogy, he has become this character who is so selfless. He's gone from a self-gratifying, selfish character to someone who is so selfless, he's now willing to give of himself in heroic ways, and even to the point of saying that it doesn't matter what I want with Leia, I'm prepared to get out of the way to ensure her happiness. This is a massive redemption arc, but it is all completely destroyed by The Force Awakens. Because in The Force Awakens, they take Han Solo, and instead of building on that redemption arc in another creative way, they completely undo that arc, and they have a situation where Han Solo has abandoned Leia, he has left her, and he has gone back to his old, criminal, selfish lifestyle. His redemption arc is completely destroyed. His character was destroyed by that writing decision. Now, why did they do that? I don't know. Maybe it was because of the taint of postmodernism, which has just crept into Star Wars and undone so much of the mythology. Perhaps they couldn't handle the idea of someone actually experiencing redemption, because maybe that spoke too much about objective truth and the possibility of forgiveness and finding a better way. And maybe some of the people in the Hollywood community who are doing the writing, they don't really recognize a lot of that in their own lives, so they don't know how to write that particularly well. Or possibly it was just pure commercial laziness for their own commercial benefit. They wanted to create this rip-off of the original Star Wars film, A New Hope, and they didn't know how to do it creatively, so the cheapest and laziest and easiest way to do it was to return Han Solo back to the original state, to undo everything, to destroy his redemption and put him back in the original state that he was in at the start of the very first trilogy. And maybe that was the only way they knew how to do this, because they were destined to rip off A New Hope with The Force Awakens. Either way, they destroyed his character. Solo may well add to that damage, but Solo isn't going to destroy the character of Han Solo. I'm opening the floor now. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, so please let me know in the comment section below whether you agree or disagree. If you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Every little bit helps, and a huge thank you to everyone who's already supporting me there. And lastly, don't forget, if you've got a question or a topic or a piece of movie news and you want to get it to me, the email details, the tweet details are in the video description below. That's right, I can hear the theme music too, which means it's time for me to depart. I will see you on Monday on The Daily Question.